Hello everyone and welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Josh, joined as ever by Scott Taylor, because there has been so much kind of next-gen news just kind of leaked and then confirmed, and we need to go through every single bit of it. But first, Scott is going to talk to me and you about teraflops.
Do you know what a flop is? Please. I hadn't Googled this, but it is core as to why this is a big deal. So the news itself revolves around Digital Foundry, who work for Eurogamer, and they're sort of known obviously in the industry as being the people you go to for hardware specs, and they've obtained a year-long report as to a leak pertaining to the GPU of the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. The new Xbox is what they wanted to be referred to. And it seems that just by going off this leak that the Xbox Series X is drastically more powerful than the PS5.
Yes.
So,
go on.
Let me tell you about some flops.
Please do.
So the thing that's weird, and I don't know how much people follow PC specs and ting in regards to what a flop is.
Rich is better than me. I'm layman.
Rich is really good with this stuff, but you know what megabytes are. 1,000 megabytes in a gigabyte, 1,000 gigabytes in a terabyte. So a flop is a floating point, which refers to any numeric value which is used to measure computational power. And so when you have a teraflop, that is 1 trillion bytes that are floating around at any given time that can create polygons, voxels, all that type of stuff.
I love it when you talk science to me.
So you know what I mean? So basically, more flops. More flops is what you want. More flops, the better.
Okay.
So with that stuff in mind, this is all from the leak as well, so we don't have any official stuff yet, but it is Eurogamer, it is Digital Foundry, so chances are it's probably going to be true. Plus this lines up with all the different leaks from last year as to the overall assumption of the power of the Xbox versus the PS5, and why Sony were waiting so long to get their model out, because actually they're a little bit behind the curve. Anyway, so the amount of flops the Xbox Series X has is 12, which compared to the original Xbox One was only 1.3. I
don't know why I'm praying. I'm praying for the flops. Okay, so that's quite a big, substantial increase.
Which is humongous. And even the Xbox One X had 6, so it's twice the power of the Xbox One X, which is obviously this generation's deluxe model. So going into the Series X, twice as powerful.
Okay.
I like the idea of that stuff.
How is that in comparison to the PlayStation 5?
Well, the PS5 apparently has 9.2, which is obviously 3 trillion less pixels, or 3 trillion less floating points potentially able to render on screen. So
I like this because I have no point of reference for what this means, but obviously just through sheer numbers that, obviously means that the Xbox One X is a less number, which means it's less powerful, and that Microsoft will be able to hold on to that moniker of having the world's most powerful console, which is admittedly a really good selling point, a really good marketing tool. I mean, that's what we need to get into in a minute, whether or not that matters in context of games and stuff, but when it comes to sheer raw power, I must admit that when I was looking to buy a PlayStation 4 and Xbox One coming off an Xbox 360, it was a big deal for me looking at those specs, even if I didn't quite know what they meant. I knew that one meant it was going to have more graphical power than the other, and that's where I gravitated towards. I'm not sure whether I would do that now though, but anyway, carry on.
Well, the thing with this is, like, it's always going to come back to the games. It's always going to come down to what projects are in the works, and I'm obviously joking about the state of Xbox, but I'm not really joking, because the state of Xbox One this generation has been fairly disastrous. They even managed to mess up the Master Chief Collection for about 4 years. And so there hasn't really been any recommendable first-party Microsoft games that have made you want to buy an Xbox One. But conversely, like last generation, the PS3 was more powerful than the 360, but it all came down to, well, general optics around the launch of the PS3, but also brilliant games on the 360 throughout its lifespan. So for me, as much as this stuff is nice and flashy, and oh my god, it seems like the Series X or will be more powerful than the PS5, it is always going to come down to the game.
Yeah, I think the PS3 is a really good point, because obviously that was more powerful than the Xbox 360, but its architecture was much more difficult for devs to use, which is why you saw great and stunning first-party games, but kind of shoddy third-party games like, Skyrim, which barely even functioned on that machine. But these two consoles at the moment seem way more developer-friendly. I don't think Sony or Microsoft would repeat that mistake again, and they want their, dev kits to be as accessible as possible. So that you would assume that more power will mean better end products, but then it does go back to what Microsoft actually have planned, because at the moment the Xbox One X is more powerful than the PlayStation 4 Pro. But I would argue that the Xbox One X doesn't have a game as stunning as God of War or
not really.
Spider-Man or something like one of Sony's first-party titles that really sucks every single bit of power from that machine and optimizes it well.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, yeah, there's a potential to be rendering sort of 12 trillion pixels or 12 trillion floating points at once, but only the first-party studios are going to be able to do that, or some people that maybe second-party studios that Microsoft can allocate resources to. Kind of like the way that Sony allocated some of their people to help From Software with Bloodborne.
Yeah.
It's going to be a case of, just because there's so much power available doesn't mean that every developer is going to be able to take advantage of it, and chances are only a fraction of the developers are going to take advantage of it. I do think, though, that alongside the fact that Microsoft are fronting this powerful console, they have been buying up studios left, right, and center.
Yeah.
Whereas Sony have kind of just been resting on their laurels a little bit. I did a whole video on problems PS5 fans or whatever might not see coming, and I think things like that point to the fact that Microsoft have been planning for the next generation for quite some time, and Christ knows how much money goes into making something this powerful, but I think they want to make sure they future-proof it by just saying, like, this is the biggest, dumbest amount of power we can throw into a system, because right now it outpaces the vast majority of PCs, but that'll obviously change in the coming years.
For me, this is a big win for Microsoft. I think that even from a, like I said, it harkens back to players like me who are really kind of get really anxious about whether or not
tech, mate.
You want the tech. You just want the tech, and it means something. At least it does at launch. You want to be, if you're putting in a lot of money, and by the sounds of it, these are going to be premium consoles at the end of the day. They're not going to be as cheap as the last generation. You want the most for your money. You want the most power, even if you don't really know what that will translate to. I do think it is a good marketing tool that will pay off in the long run, and it will make people like me very stressed at launch, because I thought I was going to get a PlayStation 5 first, but now I don't know, Scott. I'm going to have to wait and see the games. I'm going to have to look at these things that I don't really know much about, and then make a decision.
Speaking of games, we also talked about, or we're going to mention backwards compatibility, because another part of this leak talks about how the PS5 will render games, and it talks about, it apparently has 3 different modes. It was Generation 0, Generation 1, and Generation 2, pertaining to PS4 games, PS4 Pro games, and new PS5 games. No mention whatsoever of full backwards compatibility across the last generations, even though that was a patent filed by Mark Cerny himself. Maybe they're just not going forward with it anymore.
Yeah, this is kind of a weird quagmire, isn't it? Because the way that Digital Foundry actually figured out which GPU was which in the context of like these different AMD tech was that they weren't obviously just labeled PS5, potential chip. Yeah. It was that the fact that, like you said, the GPU could clock 3 different sort of states. It was the PS5, the PlayStation 4, and the PlayStation 4 Pro, which might worry would rule out full backwards compatibility across the legacy, like you said, which was patented. But at the same time, Mark Cerny has never outright stated that was going to be a thing. They've made they've tried to be specific about, yes, it will be backwards compatible with the PlayStation 4, but they haven't mentioned anything else yet, and that's just what we've pieced together. There might still be a chance that will happen.
Wasn't that patent? But didn't that patent seem to pertain to previous generations, or was it always just PS4? I thought the running theory was that everything could potentially be used using this patent.
That was a patent, but
I know they didn't go through with it.
They've never actually, officially commented on it. In the interviews with Wired, Sony's only ever said that things will be backwards compatible with PlayStation 4, and that's it. But this is the big thing for me.
Yes.
This to me indicates the fact that it has a GPU that replicates the states of the previous 2 consoles. That everything from those machines will be able to be played on a PlayStation 5, because at the moment, as good as Xbox One's backwards compatibility is, not every single game for the Xbox 360 can be played on the latest machine, whereas this to me indicates that that would be the case for the PlayStation, which is quite a good win, and then they could bring in sort of emulation and other ways to bring PlayStation 2 classics and PS1 classics and PSP classics, I guess, and PS Vita classics, I guess, over to the new machine, but again, that doesn't seem like their focus, at least at the moment, and at least at launch.
I think backwards compatibility it's not going to be the thing that swings the generation, but it's massive. You need to respect a consumer's library and the legacy of the system that you've put out there in the first place. And PlayStation, even as much as people have now grown up with Xbox, there is this entire generation who have childhood synonymous with Xbox now. PlayStation is a way more powerful brand, at least I would say so, across multiple generations, or even more generations. So I think they're staring a gift horse in the mouth.
Yeah,
a gift roach.
We talk about it quite a lot, and I do think it would be a missed opportunity, but then I can't imagine how difficult, it would be. This is a company...
It's easy.
Is it though? Because Sony took about 27 years to let you change your PlayStation Online ID.
Yeah, but they just suck at iteration. Like I said, they're a reactive company. They'll do it because someone else does it and proves it's viable, which I think, like I said, points to the reality that they should be doing this stuff. That obviously the split between hardware emulation and software emulation. Getting a little bit off track, but I think the way that they seem to be approaching it, Microsoft got out there at the Game Awards and literally said, as part of their brief on the website after they did the in-person announcement, every single game, thousands of past games will be playable on Xbox Series X. The approved list as it stands at the minute is not thousands of games, so that seems to pertain to complete backwards compatibility, which isn't the thing that Sony are leading with. They seem to have put a patent out there that they're not really running with, and then they have this multiple generation thing leaking, but it only pertains to PS4 stuff, and it's like, oh my god, Sony, just put something out and prove what the hell you're doing.
I suppose that would be their main priority at the moment, though, because they want to convince the massive install base that currently owns a version of the PlayStation 4 to make the jump to PS5, and if you can secure all of the games that we've paid for and owned over the past 7 years or so, if you can guarantee that they will make it up to PlayStation 5, I think more players will be likely to jump in, which is what they'll be focusing on at first. For me, this doesn't rule out the fact that you might get the legacy backwards compatibility later on down the line, but at launch they just need to make sure they've got PlayStation 4 secured, which is actually, I was reading apparently that there were rumors going around that even the DualShock 4 will be backwards compatible with the, or forwards compatible with the PlayStation 5, which is quite cool. Like the synergy of these two consoles and trying to make the transition as easy as possible is obviously their focus, and hopefully we will get the rest following that.
Yes, because alongside that stuff, there's also some new information about the DualShock 5.
Yes, a new patent again, because this is how we know about these things, has been found by Let's Go Digital, who have been on the ball when it comes to PlayStation patents over the past year or so.
They leaked the actual console.
Yes, they leaked the dev kit. I think they even leaked the past look of the DualShock 5. But this one is slightly different. It shows us a new design on the back, which has two buttons where I guess these fingers would be. I don't know what you call these fingers, the swearing fingers.
They should refer to them as the swearing swearing paddles. Yeah. What's your opinion on little paddles at the back of the...
I like it, it gives you more versatility. It makes sense with what Sony has been doing recently, because they just announced the attachment for the DualShock 4, that is the big
which looks a
bit bulky. This doesn't. This looks actually quite stylish, and I think that's a cool idea. What I don't like is no home button now. How am I supposed to get back to my Spotify playlist?
We were thinking of this before we came in, and that assumedly they're going to make the touchpad the new home button thing. Maybe through different swipes or pushing different corners on the touchpad. Some games like Witcher 3 have used that, like swipe in certain directions for the map or swipe another way for the inventory. And you were saying there was a game that you mentioned that uses different corners.
Yeah, if you press sort of left on the touchpad, you might get the map up. If you press right on the touchpad, you might get the inventory up. It's just nice to have those shortcuts available, so you don't have to go through all the menus. It's just when it comes to the next generation, I think that Sony is all on sort of like instantaneous gaming. They're talking about no load times, faster load times, trying to eliminate as much busy work as possible. And I think the touchpad is actually quite cool for that. Maybe not when it comes to, having to swipe and stuff, but being able to have these different pressure points that act essentially as buttons that don't look as garish on a console. You've got a bunch of different things. I think it works.
I think it can work. I mean, we're obviously assuming that the touchpad would replace the functionality of the home button, but I think it's a weird missed opportunity, or a potential missed opportunity, to not have a dedicated home button. Every console has that now. Every phone has that. It just seems like something that you kind of need when you've got this media hub approach. And I also think that if they are doing that, it feels like a response to the fact that the touchpad is kind of like a weird failed thing in regards to the PS4. That is weird loose button that we sort of use, and it's always a map and we don't really do anything else with it.
I like the DualShock 4 gimmicks, which makes me very happy that, Scott, mate,
go on, mate.
The light bar's still there.
Oh, good.
At least in this pattern.
Is it going to flash when I'm getting chased in GTA
hope so.
again?
I love the light bar. It's my favourite thing of this generation.
Why do you like what?
Because it makes the mood lighting in my flat look really good when the bright blue is emanating from it, or the red when I'm in danger.
I can't afford the lights in the corner, so I'm just going to rig the DualShock 4 up.
Honestly, when I was a student, that DualShock 4 was practically a lamp in my room.
I adore that. In fact, I'd probably recommend that. If you put that next to something that could amplify it in some way, that actually might work. I'd take it all back. Maybe the light bar is the best thing that ever happened for the sake of mood lighting.
I think so.
Maybe. But yeah, so we've got a handful of information to work with in regards to different patents and different leaks, and it seems like the Xbox Series X is 3 trillion pixels more powerful than the PS5. But let us know what you think down in the comments below as to which one you're going to buy, or at this stage, are you just waiting to see what games and stuff come out? For now, though, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I've been Josh from WhatCulture.com.
I'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.